Chapter 49. Ah! When the old woman came to the front of the courtyard and saw Wang Gou's soulless appearance and the 3 bloody teeth in his hand, she immediately screamed like an ignited firecracker. Then, she revealed a ruthless expression. "Thief, I'll fight it out with you." The old woman had some courage. As she spoke, she bumped her head over. It was clear that she wanted to perish together with the intruders. Scram! Tiger's mane had long been itching for a fight. However, without the 6th young master's order, he didn't dare to make a move. Now that the old woman had rushed over, how could he let the 6th young master do something like beating a woman? He stepped forward, lifted his leg, and kicked. Under the powerful force, the old woman flew out with a plop. She flew a full 3 to 4 meters before landing on the ground. Tiger's mane didn't use too much strength in this kick. He also knew that today's matter was mainly to teach a lesson. He couldn't kill, otherwise, the trouble wouldn't be small. But even so, this kick made Wang Gou's mother, Lady Yan, look extremely pained. After landing on the ground, she howled like a pig being slaughtered. "Ah, I killed someone, I killed someone." Sitting on the ground, Lady Yan endured the great pain from her body. Her hands continuously slapped the ground, completely looking like a shrew. "You still dare to scream? Whip her again." Yang Chendong looked at Lady Yan with disgust. Just now, when Yang Duo accidentally grabbed his arm, he saw that 6th sister's jade-like arm, which was originally as white as a lotus root, was now covered in bruises. If he guessed correctly, these should be marks left behind by forceful pinching. And most of them should be this old woman's doing. Even so, how could Yang Chendong spare her? He just whipped her again. If he could, he even wanted to directly kill her to vent his anger. "Don't." Seeing that 6th brother wanted to hit her mother-in-law, Yang Duo's originally pale face became even more bloodless. She was really frightened. Tiger's mane only listened to the 6th young master and had to carry out his orders. Without saying another word, he took 2 steps forward and lashed out with his horse whip, striking Lady Yan's face. A bloody gash ran from her forehead to her chin. It was very obvious. Then, blood flowed out from the wound. The pain of this whip far exceeded the strength of the previous kick. Yan Shi, who was in so much pain that her mouth twitched, didn't dare to cry out. However, when her hand touched the wound and touched the dark red blood, her expression changed greatly. She was about to faint in a flash. "You're not allowed to faint. Otherwise, I'll beat you awake." Yang Chendong only beat them up as a means. His real purpose was to teach them to treat his own sister better. Before that, no one should even think about fainting or playing dumb. As expected, Lady Yan, whose head was about to tilt when she heard Yang Chendong's words, was immediately energized. She forced herself not to fall to the ground. It was said that evil people needed to be dealt with by evil people. These words sometimes made sense. Yang Chendong's series of actions when he entered the courtyard really scared Wang Gou and Lady Yan. Seeing the 2 of them calm down and looking at him with panicked eyes, Yang Chendong coldly snorted and said, "Listen well. This young master is Yang Chendong. I am the 6th young master of the Yang clan. Yang Duo is my sister. You actually dared to bully her. This is disrespect to our Yang clan. Today, I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of my deceased parents. If you dare to treat my sister like this in the future, then next time, it won't be as simple as teaching you a lesson. Of course, you can choose not to believe me. However, I want to say that the consequences of trying are not something you can bear. After all, you only have one life." After coldly throwing down these words, Yang Chendong's expression turned. He looked at the trembling Yang Duo with a slightly more amiable expression. "7th older sister, they won't dare to treat you like this in the future. Otherwise, younger brother will beat them up again. Also, if 7th older sister doesn't want to live with him anymore, just tell younger brother. I'll have him divorce you." Harmonious separation meant divorce. This meant that both parties were willing. This way, if the woman wanted to marry in the future, her reputation wouldn't be damaged. It was fundamentally different from being a divorced wife. Originally, Yang Chendong wanted to directly take seventh older sister and leave. However, Qiao Yin said last night that a person's path had to be chosen by themselves. No one could make decisions for others. If the sixth young master really wanted to forcefully bring seventh young lady back, it was very likely that he would force a person to death. Yang Chendong didn't doubt the credibility of these words at all. This was because he knew that it was very likely to be the truth. This meant that the choice was in Yang Duo's hands. Sixth younger brother. At this moment, Yang Duo's eyes were already filled with tears. For so many years, she had suffered so much, but no one in the Yang family cared about her. She knew that her family must have their own difficulties. After her parents passed away, the Yang family was already unable to protect themselves. Who could stand up for her? Who would stand up for her? But today, sixth younger brother came. Not only did he come, but he also helped her vent her anger. At this moment, she felt so satisfied and happy. At this point, even if she died immediately, it would be worth it. At the same time, she was also very worried that sixth younger brother would be involved in a lawsuit because of this matter. After all, Wang Go was also an official. Once reported, he would definitely be held responsible. Perhaps if she stayed and apologized properly, the Wang family would be less angry and sixth younger brother would be less guilty. Therefore, she couldn't leave. Not only could she not leave, but she also had to persuade Yang Chendong to leave quickly. With such a big commotion here, the people from the 5 cities warden's office should be here soon. At that time, if she was caught, she wouldn't be able to leave even if she wanted to. At this moment, Yang Duo made a decision and said with incomparable certainty, "Sixth elder brother, you should leave quickly. Seventh elder sister thanks you for helping me vent my anger and letting me know that I am still a Yang family member. But you really caused trouble by hitting people. Leave quickly, leave this place." With father's connections in the past, he might be able to give you a lighter sentence. Yang Duo's words were sincere. At this time, she was still thinking about Yang Chendong, which made him very touched. "It's okay, seventh elder sister, don't worry. If they want to sue, then let them. I will be fine. You have to believe in your sixth younger brother. Also, I will send people here to gather information. If something happens to seventh elder sister, I will let everyone in the Wang family die with her. At that time, your sixth younger brother will really be doomed. If you want this result, then go ahead and seek death. Otherwise, stay here and your days will get better." Yang Chendong was very worried that seventh elder sister would do something that she would regret after he left, so he could only use this reason to threaten her. He believed that if he said this, even if it was for him, seventh elder sister would choose to live first and see the situation first. Hearing her sixth younger brother say that if something happened to her, the Wang family would be buried with her, at this moment, she really believed it. She only felt that after not seeing him for a few years, her sixth younger brother had completely changed. He had changed so much that she couldn't recognize him. Naturally, she couldn't tell if he was lying to her. But what if it was true? She didn't dare to try. The consequences would be that after she died, she wouldn't be able to live peacefully and wouldn't be able to see her parents in the underworld. Yang Duo hesitated. Yang Chendong saw this and felt confident. He knew that his seventh elder sister wouldn't do anything stupid. He immediately smiled and said, "Okay, seventh elder sister, sixth younger brother still has things to do. See you later." After speaking, Yang Chendong didn't look at Wang Go and Lady Yen who were still stunned on the ground. He just turned around and walked out with Tiger's mane. He believed that the two of them must have heard his words. Before they took him down, they wouldn't have the courage to make a move on seventh elder sister because the consequences were not something they could bear. After beating them up and sending out the warning, Yang Chendong felt a burst of relief. After leaving the Wang residence, he saw the people of the 5 cities warden's office in the distance. They were wearing mandarin duck jackets and rushing over. He first snorted and then said to Tiger's Mane, "Immediately return to the Yang family village and do as the young master instructed." "Young master, rest assured." "Young master, be careful." Tiger's Mane promised and got on his horse and left first. Yang Chendong was left standing by his horse, waiting for the people of the 5 cities warden's office to come to his side and surround him. However, what was unknown to everyone was that the captain of the first group of guards, Chiu Vi, was watching from a distance with his 9 brothers. It was guaranteed that if anyone tried to harm the 6th young master, they would quickly take action and stabilize the situation. "The people in the courtyard were injured by you. What is your identity? What do you do? What is your name?" The leader of the group, Shao Qi, glanced at the situation in the courtyard and asked Yang Chendong with a serious expression. "Stop talking nonsense. Tell this young master where the drum of hearing is." Yang Chendong ignored Shao Qi's question and said in a rhetorical tone. "Drum of hearing? What do you want to do?" Shao Qi was puzzled. The drum of hearing was a drum that was hung outside the imperial court during the feudal era in China. It was used for people who had grievances or urgent cases to beat the drum and report to the court. Zhu Yuanzhang, the founder of the Ming Dynasty, also set up the drum of hearing and assigned people to manage it. Once there was a grievance, the emperor would personally handle it. If any officials tried to stop the grievances, they would be severely punished. Yang Chendong asking where the drum of hearing was clearly an important matter. How could a mere Shao Qi dare to stop him? "What do I want to do? Do you think you have the right to ask? Let me tell you, hurry up and lead the way. Otherwise, the consequences are not something you can bear." Yang Chendong's calm and confident expression frightened Shao Qi. "Okay, I'll bring you there." Although Shao Qi didn't understand the situation, he knew that if the person in front of him really wanted to beat the drum of hearing, he really couldn't stop him. Otherwise, not only him, but his entire family would be in trouble. After weighing the pros and cons, Shao Qi thought that Yang Chendong was already in his grasp and couldn't escape. Since that was the case, there was no harm in following him to take a look. Thus, he led the way. The soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office stood on both sides of Yang Chendong, as if they were protecting him and preventing him from escaping. Chapter 50. On the streets, this scene became a common sight. Many people who didn't know what was going on were wondering what was going on when they saw someone being escorted by soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office heading toward the imperial city. What was the identity of this young master? Yang Chendong didn't realize that he was committing a crime. As he walked through the streets of the capital, he looked left and right. This was the capital of the great Ming Dynasty. How fortunate was he to be able to enter the capital and observe it closely. The group didn't travel very slowly. In just an hour, they arrived at the drum outside the right gate of Chang'an. When a drum that was half the height of a person appeared in front of him, Yang Chendong dismounted from his horse and strode to the drum. Dong, 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 he struck the drum 3 times in a row. The sound of the drum immediately spread far and wide and could be heard clearly even in the nearby imperial city. The flag officer originally wanted to see if Yang Chendong really dared to strike the drum. Unexpectedly, the other party didn't even hesitate before striking the drum. At that moment, the flag officer retreated a few steps. He had finally met a ruthless person today. However, this was the first time he had encountered a situation where the perpetrator wanted to cry out for justice. In the main hall of the imperial palace, a court session was underway. The Minister of War, Kuang Yi, was reporting on the case of Deng Maoqi's rebellion in Fujian. "Reporting to your majesty, Deng Maoqi calls himself the flattening king, and has already conquered more than 20 counties in Fujian. Most of the government's vaults have been plundered, and everything inside has been looted. Currently, he is planning to move towards Zhejiang. This subject is certain that your majesty will send out an order to suppress the bandits. As the Minister of War, he hadn't been in a good mood recently. He had originally thought that Deng Maoqi was just a country bumpkin who had brought some commoners to cause trouble. All he needed to do was to mobilize the soldiers from the nearby guard posts. However, he had never imagined that the county government would be attacked several times in a row, causing the defensive line to collapse. This caused Deng Maoqi's momentum to grow, and he seemed to be unstoppable. Of course, Kuang Yi didn't know that this was the doing of Leng Song's soldiers. He followed the ideology of robbing as many people as he could and used Deng Maoqi's name to take down several important counties. As a result, the defensive line that the soldiers had set up was broken, causing the flames of war to burn even more fiercely. They're just a bunch of foolish commoners. How could they cause such a huge incident? Zhu Qizhen, the lofty hero sect's Zhu Qizhen, who was dressed in a golden dragon robe, was very puzzled. As he spoke, he looked at ceremony supervisor Wang Zhen, who was standing to the side. Wang Zhen's ability to read people's expressions was outstanding. After noticing Ying Zong's gaze, he asked, "Minister Xie, did the nearby guards fail to dispatch troops and thus delay the opportunity?" "No, they did their best. Unfortunately, the bandits were too powerful and could not be stopped." Kuang Yi did not show the slightest disrespect just because Wang Zhen was the one asking the question. In fact, in the imperial court, it was not uncommon for Wang Zhen to ask questions on behalf of the emperor. As time passed, everyone naturally got used to it. Kuang Yi and Wang Zhen had always minded their own business. Even if their relationship wasn't good, it wasn't bad either. This ceremony supervisor didn't have any intention of framing Wang Zhen. Furthermore, he knew that internal chaos and instability in the imperial court was a taboo for the country. As such, he didn't dare to do anything at this time. He turned around and looked at Ying Zong, "Emperor, the foolish commoners have been tempted and don't believe in the emperor's authority. In my opinion, we should send troops to suppress the bandits." "Good. Since Sir also has the same idea, send Censor Zhang Kai, Marquis Ning Yongchen Mao, Liang Kuei, Chen Yu, and the others to lead 20,000 soldiers from the capital and 27,000 soldiers from Jiangsu and Zhejiang. Use the Mongolian and Hui elites to suppress them." Ying Zong trusted Wang Zhen. Since he had said so, he didn't hesitate and sent out an imperial edict. The emperor is wise. Seeing that Ying Zong had decided to send troops, all the officials knelt on the ground and praised him. Logically speaking, since things had reached this stage, Ying Zong should have shown that he was a wise emperor and said, "Everyone is happy." In reality, he was about to say that, but suddenly, 3 drum beats rang out. Even after entering the imperial court, they could still hear it clearly. This is the drum beating. Some of the more knowledgeable officials immediately recognized the origin of the sound. Everyone knew that there had to be something important to beat the drum to hear the drum. As such, they hadn't heard the sound of the drum for many years. However, today, it suddenly rang out, causing everyone's expression to tremble. They all wondered if something big had happened. Could it be that there was a rebellion? The officials all had faces of worry and panic. Only Ying Zong's face was filled with joy. He had been the emperor for 13 years and had seen all kinds of things in the imperial court. However, this was the first time he had heard the sound of the drum. He couldn't help but be interested. "Teacher, quickly send someone to see who is beating the drum. Bring that person over for me to see." Since the emperor had spoken, Wang Zhen didn't dare to disobey. He gave a look to one of his eunuchs, and someone immediately rushed over. The pitiful group of old officials were still kneeling on the ground. Without an imperial decree, they didn't dare to stand up. In front of the drum beating, the 5 cities' warden's office and the embroidered uniform guards had surrounded Yang Chendong, who was wearing a long blue robe. The only difference was that Yang Chendong, who was surrounded, had a relaxed expression. From time to time, he would reach out to touch the edge of the drum beating, as if he wanted to see what material it was made of. On the other hand, the soldiers surrounding him were all very nervous. Town Supervisor Hu Changning was among the crowd. It was also a coincidence that he was on duty today. Originally, his attention was focused on the imperial court because no one knew what might happen. Perhaps some blind official would anger the emperor and be dragged out. At that time, the embroidered uniform guards would have to do the work. Things like this had often happened in the past. Today, it was the complete opposite. Things didn't happen in the imperial palace, but in front of the drum beating. As soon as he heard the sound of the drum, he secretly knew that something bad had happened. He quickly rushed over with a few of his subordinates. Among them were the two subordinates that he had brought to Jianghu last time. At this time, the two of them had already recognized Yang Chendong. Their faces were full of admiration. Although they didn't say anything, it was clear from their eyes that they admired the sixth young master's courage. Yang Chendong naturally recognized Hu Changning and the others. He immediately thought of a plan. Today's matter was destined to be of great merit. Since it was a favor at no cost, of course it would be best to give it to someone who was full of goodwill. Lord Hu, this official greets you. Yang Chendong stepped forward and cupped his hands in greeting in front of Hu Changning. Governor Yang Chendong greets you. Hu Changning couldn't figure out what Yang Chendong wanted to do. Could it be that he knew that he had caused trouble and wanted to worm his way into being friends? He had just heard from the flag officer of the 5 cities warden's office that this person was so daring that he went to Wang Go's house in broad daylight and beat him up. The imperial court had long made it clear that only the imperial power could punish an official. If anyone acted without permission, no matter what reason they had, they would be severely punished. This also meant that Yang Chendong was now a criminal official. What benefits would there be to be on good terms with such a person? If it were someone else, Hu Changning would definitely speak righteously and speak in a businesslike manner. After all, who would want to have any relationship with a criminal official? But Yang Chendong was not someone else. Others might not know his daughter's thoughts, but how could Hu Changning not know? If Hu Yen knew that the sixth young master had appeared in front of her father, but her father had ignored him and sent him to the imperial prison according to official business, who knew how long she would ignore him? If that was the case, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Of course, the most important thing was that Hu Changning did not think that Yang Chendong would do such a reckless thing. The two of them had interacted before, and the feeling that this person gave him was definitely not as impetuous as other young people. Now that Yang Chendong had taken the initiative to greet him, he also wanted to know what had happened. At the very least, if he could help, he would reach out to help. Even if it was out of respect for the old Yang Rong, this was something that should be done. Governor Yang, do you know that you have committed a serious crime today? First, you beat up an official of the imperial court, and then you beat the drum. What exactly do you want to do? When the two of them walked together, Hu Changning lowered his voice and questioned with a displeased expression. Ah, Lord Hu, everything is wrongly accused. Yang Chendong's expression was one of crying injustice, as if he was the victim. What exactly is going on? Speak truthfully. Hu Changning was also deceived by this expression. Of course, this was because he still did not understand the sixth young master. Once he interacted with him more in the future, he would understand what kind of person this person was. In the future, when he worked with him, he would be more careful. Yes, I do not dare to deceive Lord Hu. The matter is like this. Yang Chendong's honest appearance was somewhat pitiful. This lowly official arrived at the capital yesterday and went directly to the Yang family manor 15 li south of the city. As soon as I entered the manor, I did not care about the fatigue of the carriage and immediately went to the manor. When I saw this auspicious event, I could not help but want to report it to His Majesty and the imperial court. However, because the city gates were already closed, I could not enter, so I had no choice but to stay in the manor and wait for daybreak. As such, I tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep. As soon as the sun rose, I rode into the city. As he spoke, Yang Chendong's body swayed, as if he really did not have a good rest. As he fell, he was leaning towards Hu Zhongning's side. The honest lord who reflexively reached out his hand to support him, and caught him in the act. Leaning on Hu Zhongning's shoulder, Yang Chendong acted as if he was feeling better and continued, after entering the city, this lowly official realized that as a mere 9th-level official, how could I have the opportunity to meet His Majesty? While thinking with furrowed brows, I unknowingly arrived outside Lulakang. Coincidentally, I saw 7th sister here. I originally wanted to go forward and ask where the drum of hearing was. This was probably the only way for this lowly official to meet His Majesty. Who would have thought that my 7th brother-in-law would not ask about right and wrong and indiscriminately try to remove me from my post? If it was any other time, this lowly official would have tolerated it. Who told him to be my 7th brother-in-law? However, when I remembered that I still had an important matter to report to the emperor, in a moment of desperation, I pushed Wang Go with the back of my hand. Unexpectedly, his body was actually so weak that he fell after being pushed by me. In his anger and shame, he wanted to fight me with his life. At that time, his eyes were all red. This lowly official saw that he had clearly gone mad and slapped him, wanting to wake him up. However, who would have thought that Wang Go's mother would arrive at the same time and misunderstand this lowly official and try to fight me with her? Her eyes were also red. In order to protect this lowly official servant raised his hand and gave her a horsewhip, waking her up. Chapter 51. The story continued. According to Yang Chendong, his actions were completely passive, forced, and helpless. He was the biggest victim. Yang Chendong paid attention to Hu Zhongning's expression and found that he was listening seriously. He smiled and continued, after waking the woman up, this lowly official wanted to go up and apologize. Who would have thought that the soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office would arrive? Only then did this lowly official remember that there was something important to do. I immediately asked the soldiers where the drum was. Lord, who can go and ask? That is what happened. Yang Chendong's confidence in the last sentence was also because he had said so much. Only this sentence was true, and it could stand up to anyone's investigation. Hu Zhongning allowed Yang Chendong to lean on him and listen carefully. When there was no more movement, he made an inference about the entire matter and concluded that the words were not true. What kind of coincidence was it that he came to 7th sister's door? The capital was so big, how could there be such a coincidence? It must have been premeditated long ago. But the crux of the matter was not here, but the auspicious matter that Yang Chendong spoke of. What kind of matter could make the 6th young master of the Yang family so fearless and dare to openly beat up an official of the court? Hu Zhongning still remembered Beta Persei's skills very clearly. If Yang Chendong only wanted to take revenge on Wang Go for mistreating his 7th sister, he only needed to send this person in the middle of the night. That way, no one would know. But he did not. Instead, he chose to do it openly, choosing to let everyone know. Could it be that Yang Chendong did not understand the laws of the great Ming dynasty? Hu Zhongning did not believe this. How could such a smart person not know something that even the common people knew? But he still did it. It could only be said that he was very confident in his heart. But what was this confidence? Hu Zhongning could not think of it, let alone guess. He tilted his head to look at Yang Chendong, wanting to ask him clearly. Lord Hu, you don't need to ask me. This lowly official wouldn't dare to boast about such an auspicious item. Now, you only need to go to the palace and tell His Majesty the memorials that this official has just told you. When the time comes, you will naturally have a share of the credit. Yang Chendong chuckled. It was at this moment that he noticed a few eunuchs approaching from the corner of his eye. He hurriedly lowered his head and said, "Lord Hu, please go quickly. If the eunuchs snatch the credit at night, it won't be good." Hu Zhangning naturally noticed the eunuch coming from afar and understood the meaning of Yang Chendong's words. He nodded and said, "All right, I will believe you this time. But remember, if you dare to lie to me, I will not let you off easily." Don't worry, Yang Chendong replied with a grin as he patted Hu Zhangning's shoulder. No matter what, Hu Zhangning was a man in his 40s. To be patted on the shoulder by a young man who was not even 20 years old, he couldn't help but feel angry. He wanted to vent his anger. "Lord Hu, please go quickly. Otherwise, there won't be time for you to perform meritorious deeds." Yang Chendong had already expected this outcome and urged him repeatedly. As expected, once he said this, Hu Zhangning could only suppress the idea of settling the score with Yang Chendong. He turned around and quickly rushed into the palace. But on the way, he was still thinking that if Yang Chendong dared to trick him, he would not let him off easily. But on the other hand, there was no need for him to trick him. After all, he had gone to Jianghu to pay respects to old Master Yang and old Madam Yang. Just based on this, there was no need for him to trick him. Before the beating of the drum, Hu Zhangning had just left when 3 eunuchs came over. The leader of the eunuchs held a horsetail whisk in his hand, his face pale. Before the eunuchs could steady themselves, a hoarse voice sounded. "Who beat the drum?" In reply to eunuch, it was this official, Governor Yang Chendong of Jianghu Prefecture. Although he was unwilling, the 6th young master still bowed slightly, cupped his hands, and bowed. Then, he straightened his back. "Why did you beat the drum? Is there a grievance?" The eunuch instinctively thought that the person who beat the drum had been wronged, and it should be quite a big grievance. Otherwise, why would he dare to do such a big thing? "No." Yang Chendong shook his head. "Then what is it?" The eunuch was somewhat displeased. He was unhappy that Yang Chendong was not tactful. In his opinion, since he was here, the other party should take the initiative to answer the question, instead of answering every time he asked a question. How could this eunuch know that Yang Chendong did not have a good impression of these eunuchs? Who knew how many loyal and wise officials had been ruined by these eunuchs? Just now, he bowed because he was forced by the situation. It was already the biggest concession he could make. Now, how could he give the other party too much face? Of course it's a big matter, and such a big matter can only be told to the current emperor. Yang Chendong straightened his neck, looking like he would not speak until he saw the main person. "How dare you?" Seeing that Yang Chendong was so arrogant and still acting like this in front of the eunuch leader glared and said angrily. Yang Chendong was not frightened by the eunuch's words at all. Instead, he shook his head and said, "I have already asked Sir Hu Zhangning to report this matter to the emperor and the officials. If this eunuch feels that his status is high enough and stable enough to be higher than Eunuch Wang, then you can arrest this official and put me in prison. However, you must think clearly about the consequences." The eunuch was not afraid of Yang Chendong's threats at all. He was a eunuch and had a powerful group of eunuchs as his backing. He was not afraid of things. However, the mention of Eunuch Wang had truly frightened him. Eunuchs were not afraid of civil and military officials because they all had to listen to the emperor. However, they were afraid of eunuchs. This was because the methods of these eunuchs could often get things done without imperial authority. This was what made them terrifying. Moreover, the surname Wang was a common surname. There were countless Eunuch Wangs in the palace. If one of them was in power, wouldn't he be at a disadvantage? Thinking that it was better to be safe than sorry, the eunuch spoke with some caution. "May I know who this Eunuch Wang you are talking about is?" "Of course it's Eunuch Wang of the Ceremony Directorate." Yang Chendong knew that the eunuch would ask this question and had been waiting for it. When he spoke of this, he did not even pant. After all, Yang Chendong still had 20% of Wang Zhen's shares in the company. That was a lot of money. As long as he used his name, it should be fine. A person's reputation was like the shadow of a tree. When Wang Zhen's name was reported, the eunuch's expression changed as he suddenly thought of something. What did this official say you were called? This official is Yang Chendong, governor of Jianghu Prefecture. Oh, so it's sixth young master. So it's official Yang. Sorry for the disrespect. In the blink of an eye, the eunuch's expression changed again and again. He went from being furious to smiling like a flower. This speed of change was enough for him to be an actor and had the potential to become a superstar. It was obvious that the eunuch had already remembered Yang Chendong's identity after a short while. During this period of time in the palace, he had heard a lot about the sixth young master. The 3 mirrors in the palace were all his methods. It was just that because Jianghu was too far away from the capital, no one thought about it for a while. Now that he knew Yang Chendong's identity, the eunuch's attitude immediately changed, and his face was full of smiles. Official Yang, may I know why you are beating the drum today? Since the eunuch's attitude had changed, Yang Chendong did not put on airs. He immediately moved his head closer and whispered, "Something good." "Something good?" The eunuch leader asked in surprise. "Yes, something very good. I'll have to trouble you to lead the way." Yang Chendong returned to his smiling self. As he spoke, he handed over a bag of things. Out of habit, the eunuch leader reached out to take it and measured it with his hand. However, he felt that it was not heavy at all. His face could not help but tense up again. If it was not silver, then what was it? Before the eunuch leader could ask anything, Yang Chendong took the initiative to say, "This is called a diaper. It can be used to clean the crotch area and ensure that no foreign matter will come out at any time. Oh yes, this is a one-time use item. It won't be used for long. If you need it in the future, you can send someone to get it from me. But may I know your name?" Hearing that it was a cleansing item, the eunuch leader was first shocked, then delighted. It was not for any other reason. It was because eunuchs did not have that thing. It was often difficult for them to resist the urge to defecate and a strange smell would come out. Usually, it was fine, but once they worked in front of the emperor would feel it and loathe them. Often, they would lose their lives. Now that there was something that could help solve this problem, how could he not be delighted? Our ceremony supervisor is Mao Mu. His position is low, and he only occasionally works in front of the emperor. Oh yes, does official Yang's item really have a miraculous effect? Of course. Eunuch Mao, feel free to use it. If I deceive you, you can make things difficult for me afterwards, Yang Chendong said confidently. He had asked Zhou Hua's garment factory to make this item. It had been used on dozens of infants. It had no problem covering their bowels, let alone a lowly eunuch. After knowing that Mao Mu was the ceremony supervisor, Yang Chendong wanted to make friends with him. According to the ceremony supervisor system, besides Wang Zhen, there was also the admiral, head seal, pen keeper, and finally, the ceremony supervisor. However, the lower the rank, the easier it was to make friends with him. If they really became friends, it would be like having a spy in the palace. It would make many things more convenient in the future. The man was in love, and the woman was in love. Yang Chendong and Mao Mu both wanted to make friends with each other, so the two of them chatted enthusiastically. Yang Chendong even suggested to Mao Mu that he use the diapers first. If the effect was good, he could send someone to the Yang clan manor to get it. Afterwards, he could give it to eunuch Wang Zhen and a few other eunuchs. It would be a great service. Chapter 52. Mao Mu was delighted to hear this. Although he held a post in the ceremony directorate, there was still a gap of several levels between them. Wang Zhen was such a lofty figure that it was not up to him to offer filial piety. Even if he had the chance, he would not be able to offer anything good. But with Yang Chendong's support, things were completely different. With this good thing, currying favor and improving their relationship was just a matter of minutes. It only took a short while for them to go from being unhappy to now being as close as one. At this moment, Mao Mu was pulling Yang Chendong toward the imperial palace. In the imperial court, Hu Zhangning was kneeling on the ground, repeating Yang Chendong's words. Governor Yang said that he accidentally came to Lulakang and coincidentally saw seventh sister of his family here. He wanted to ask where the drum of hearing was and use this method to meet His Majesty. But who would have thought that his seventh brother-in-law would not ask about right and wrong, and indiscriminately beat him up? Governor Yang had no choice but to retaliate. Hu Zhangning was still speaking, but the faces of all the officials in the imperial court were filled with discomfort. What coincidence! What coincidence! That was only enough to fool a 3-year-old child. Which of the people standing here was not a shrewd person? Who did not know the secret behind this? Thinking about how Yang Chendong had only been in the capital for 2 days, on his first day in the capital, he had actually beaten up an official. Speaking of which, he was truly a strange person. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was young and frivolous. At this time, the officials had already stood up. They stood there holding back their laughter as they listened to Hu Zhangning's absurd story. Almost everyone knew that all of this was done intentionally by Yang Chendong. But there was only one person who listened with great interest, Zhu Qizhen of the Ying sect. He was only a young man who had just turned 20 years old. He was able to become the current emperor not because of his great ability, but because of his good fortune. He had a good father and a good family background. That was why he was able to inherit all of this, including the emperor's throne. How much experience did he have? Zhu Qizhen, who rarely left the palace, was not much different from a child. What he knew was only what the officials said. In the past, it was all about the world being peaceful, the people being in good health, and cheering loudly. Or, there were foolish people who rebelled under the influence of bad people, but as long as the imperial army arrived, it would be instantly quelled, and the people could once again live a happy life. Occasionally, some officials would be sentenced to prison for their crimes, but it was only written in writing. It didn't matter whether it was read or heard, it didn't arouse any interest. How could it be as interesting as Hu Zhangning said? Yang Chendong was a master storyteller. The story of him beating up seventh brother-in-law seemed to have become a wonderful story after being told by him. It was just that he was the good guy and Wang Go was the bad guy. Ying Zong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, couldn't help but nod his head. Even after Hu Zhangning closed his mouth, he still asked, "Beloved Minister Hu, what's next?" Hu Zhangning's mouth was dry and his tongue was dry. He had just stopped talking when the emperor suddenly asked this question. "I asked you what's next. What happened to that Wang Go and his mother? Did they fight with Magistrate Yang again? Hurry up and tell me." Ying Zong asked with great interest. When these words were said, the officials were silent. They only remembered now that their emperor was not very old and was at the age where he liked to play. Hu Zhangning, who was kneeling on the ground, was first confused by this question. Then he heard a light cough. He couldn't be more familiar with it and knew that it was his father, Hu Kuang, reminding him. He immediately kowtowed to the ground and said, replying to the emperor, Magistrate Yang was concerned about this matter and did not tangle with Wang Go's family. Instead, he used the arrival of the 5 cities' warden's office to ask where the drums were. Then, the sound of the drums was heard. That's it? Ying Zong clearly didn't like this kind of ending. However, when he noticed that the other officials, including his teacher, Wang Zhen, all had stupefied expressions, he remembered that this was the imperial court and not his teacher telling him a story in private. He straightened his body and said, Magistrate Yang wanted to present a sign of good fortune. For this, he did not care about the fatigue of traveling. His actions are praiseworthy. As for the matter of accidentally entering Wang Gou's family, it is indeed a matter of fate. I don't think there is any need to look into it. The emperor is wise. Immediately, the crowd kneeled on the ground again and shouted, "Long live the emperor!" Who was Wang Gou? Probably not many people in the imperial court knew. Although Yang Chendong was also young, his name was already well known. Last time, Wang Zhen had even said good things about him. Furthermore, he had been recommended by the Minister of Personnel, Wang Ji. How many people didn't know about him? Not to mention, the reason why Yang Chendong dared to sound the drums was probably because something good was going to happen. At this time, who would argue with the sixth young master? Most of them were interested in the so-called good fortune. If a small Hanlin Academy official was beaten, then so be it. Fortunately, it was an official beating an official and not a commoner beating an official. This was not considered a slap to the faces of the officials. Seeing the crowd praise the emperor, Ingzong's mood was also good. He continued, "Beloved official who has done a meritorious service by investigating the situation and should be rewarded. When Magistrate Yang enters the main hall and speaks of the good fortune, he will be rewarded. Come, summon Yang Chendong into the main hall. The emperor is wise." "Thank you, your majesty." Hu Changning kowtowed again. He was very happy. This Yang Chendong did not trick him. When he said that he had done a meritorious service, he had done a meritorious service. The emperor gave a decree that he wanted to see Yang Chendong in person and see what the so-called good fortune was. The officials were all waiting with their eyes down and nose down, waiting for the appearance of the sixth young master of the Yang clan. They wanted to see what the good fortune was and what the person who wrote those wonderful stories looked like. A eunuch went out to spread the news that Mao Mu was accompanying Yang Chendong outside the main hall. When he heard that the emperor wanted to see him, he immediately cupped his fist and said with a smile, "Congratulations, official Yang." Eunuch Mao is too polite. Congratulations, congratulations. After this matter, I also welcome Eunuch Mao to visit the Yang clan manor. Yang Chendong also cupped his fist and returned the greeting. Of course, of course. In the future, there will be many places to disturb official Yang. There was silence in the imperial court. Several ministers and important officials were standing there with their eyes closed. Only a few young officials who could not remain calm would look out of the main hall from time to time. Just from this point, it could be seen that compared to calming one's qi, ginger was spicier. He's coming, he's coming. About half a cup of tea's time later, a young man wearing a long robe was led into the main hall by a young eunuch. He was tall and slender, and his face was as bright as the moon. His every movement was filled with confidence, and he did not seem to be nervous because he was entering the main hall of the imperial palace. Of course, it would be a lie to say that he was not nervous. No matter what, this was Yang Chendong's first time entering the imperial palace. However, he adjusted his breathing very well, so that his face maintained a calm appearance that others would think it was. After entering the hall, he strode forward. When he was 20 steps away from the throne, he stood still. Then, he knelt on the ground and said, "Governor Yang Chendong of Jianghu Prefecture pays his respects to the emperor. Long live the emperor. Minister Yang, please rise." Ingzong's face was full of curiosity. He had read the legend of the Condor heroes, Shao Li's flying dagger, and the smiling, proud wanderer. He was attracted by the wonderful content, and now that he finally saw the author, he could not help but be curious. Yang Chendong said, "Thank you, your majesty." Then, he stood up and looked at Zhu Qizhen, who was sitting on the dragon throne. He felt that Zhu Qizhen was young and a bit handsome. Of course, compared to being handsome, Yang Chendong felt that Zhu Qizhen's appearance was better. "You are Yang Chendong? Are you the one who struck the drum?" Ingzong asked with interest. All the ministers present, including Wang Zhen, were looking at Yang Chendong. In fact, among these people, except for Hu Zhangning, who was standing to the side, it was the first time they saw this young man, the founder of Yang Bao. Replying to your majesty, it was me who struck the drum. There was really a great omen in the world, and I was impatient, so I struck the drum. I ask for your majesty's forgiveness. No matter, I can understand your intentions. If there is really a great omen, I will acquit you. However, if you dare to deceive me, you will be punished for several crimes. Do you understand? As Ingzong spoke, his face suddenly became serious and his expression became serious. It was said that accompanying the emperor was like accompanying a tiger. Although Zhu Qizhen was not old, he had been the emperor for 13 years. Once he became dignified, there was still a trace of power. He would be punished for several crimes, not just 2. It could be seen that Ingzong had included the matter of Yang Chendong beating Wang Go and his mother. It could be seen that Zhu Qizhen was not muddle-headed. It was just that he did not want to think about some things. I understand. Please allow me to report. Yang Chendong did not feel the slightest bit of fear because of the emperor's words, because what he was about to report was indeed an auspicious omen. Its influence could even be passed down through the ages, could shock the world, and would benefit millions of people. With so much influence and use, Yang Chendong was naturally full of confidence. Good, beloved Minister Yang, please speak. This emperor and the other ministers are all listening. Ingzong nodded, looking like he was all ears. At this time, not only Zhu Qizhen, but all of the civil and military officials in the court pricked up their ears. They all wanted to hear if this matter that was caused by striking the drum was really a great omen or if it was just an excuse to tease the officials. Feeling the atmosphere in the court was too tense, Yang Chendong's lips curled up. He did not go straight to the main topic, but cupped his hands and said, Your Majesty, before I report this matter, I wonder if I can ask the officials a few questions? Oh? Is this related? Ingzong was still waiting to hear about the auspicious omen. He was originally in high spirits, but when he heard Yang Chendong's request, his face became constipated. It is related, it is greatly related. Yang Chendong replied. Chapter 53. Alright, if that's the case, you may ask. My beloved ministers, no matter what Minister Yang asks, you only need to answer truthfully. Seeing Yang Chendong speak with such certainty, Ingzong suppressed his curiosity. He wanted to see what this person was planning. Thank you, Your Majesty. With the Emperor's permission, Yang Chendong first cupped his hands in thanks, then turned his gaze to the civil and military officials on both sides of the court. As his gaze swept over them, many of the officials couldn't help but lower their heads. They didn't understand what the 6th young master of the Yang clan wanted to do. What kind of questions would he ask? If it was related to secrets and privacy, should they answer? If they didn't answer, they would be deceiving the emperor. If they answered, they might fall into a trap. At this moment, many people were cursing Yang Chendong in their hearts for being meddlesome. Yang Chendong didn't want to think about the mentality of the crowd. The reason he did this was for the sake of his next plan. There was a saying that only when there was a comparison would it be deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. What he was looking for now was the art of comparison. May I ask which one of you is the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua? As soon as these words were spoken, there were a few more heavy sighs in the court. Clearly, when these people saw that Yang Chendong didn't call their names, they couldn't help but relax a lot, to the point that their breathing became heavier. As soon as the voice fell, a person walked out from the front of the court. He had a dignified appearance and had the air of a minister. He looked to be around 60 years old. This old official is Wang Zhua, but does Magistrate Yang have something to ask? Wang Zhua's courtesy name was Meng Fu. He was well versed in the classics and history, skilled in financial management, and held the position of Minister of Revenue. Lord Wang, this official greets you. I've called you Lord Wang today because I want to ask if our great Ming dynasty has sufficient food and if the people have enough to eat and wear. Yang Chendong was very respectful towards capable people. When he faced Wang Zuo's bow, he also expressed his feelings and was incomparably sincere. Wang Zuo had been in the bureaucracy for dozens of years, so what kind of people had he not seen? He had already refined his fiery eyes. Just now, whether Yang Chendong's bow was sincere or just for show, he could naturally tell. Seeing that the other party was sincerely asking for advice, he replied, "Our great Ming dynasty still has plenty of food. As for the food and clothing of the common people, there are still some border areas that have not been completely solved." As expected of an old official, his reaction was quick. It was obvious that they did not have enough food, but they said it in such a euphemistic way, using the difference in area as an answer. In this way, even if Yang Chendong were to say that there were people who didn't have enough to eat, he would have something to refute and would not be completely powerless to fight back. Yang Chendong did not comment on Wang Zuo's mature words. This was originally not the main point, so he continued to ask, "I would like to ask official Wang again, why is it that our great Ming emperor is wise and his subjects are dedicated, yet there are still people who do not have enough to eat in such a time of prosperity? Governor Yang, watch your words and actions. Don't stray from the topic." The Minister of Rights, Hu Shao, had not spoken, but at this time, he suddenly reminded Yang Chendong that his words were a bit too extreme. This was not because Hu Shao wanted to make things difficult for Yang Chendong. On the contrary, he was helping him. No matter what, because of him, Hu Changning had meritorious service. Based on this point, he had to express his gratitude. "Thank you for your reminder, official. This official will pay attention." Yang Chendong did not know who Hu Shao was, nor did he know who he was. However, from the other party's words, he could feel a trace of goodwill, so he immediately cupped his hands and thanked him. Then, when he looked at Wang Zuo, he changed the topic and asked, "Official Wang, how much farmland does our great Ming dynasty have, and how many people do we have? How much land can be produced per mu, and how many people can it support?" This question was directly related to the foundation of the country, so Wang Zuo naturally would not answer lightly. However, there were some questions that he could still answer. The ratio of land to population is slightly lacking. The average yield of land per mu is about 2 stones. If there is a good harvest, the people will naturally not have to worry about food. However, if there is a disaster year, there will be a bit of a shortage. Wang Zuo's answer was reasonable and pointed directly at the heavens. What he meant was that the people relied on the heavens for food. If the weather was good, the country would be prosperous and the people would be at peace. On the other hand, if there was a problem, it would not be with the people, but with the heavens. Yes, no one can grasp the temper of the heavens. No one can predict whether the weather will be good or bad. For a time, the officials below suddenly began to discuss. They seemed to be sighing about something, but in fact, they were using this to tell Yang Chendong that the temper of the heavens was not something that could be controlled by anyone. Therefore, it was reasonable that there was a shortage of food. While the people below were discussing, even Zhu Qizhen, who was sitting high on the dragon throne, nodded in agreement. This wasn't the first time he had heard such talk, and he also thought it was reasonable. Sometimes, because of natural disasters, there would even be imperial censors who would point out that he, the emperor, the son of heaven, had done something inappropriate and caused the disaster. Every time, he was quite angry, but he had no way to refute. Everyone seemed to have understood something, and they were either thinking about something or whispering about something. Suddenly, Yang Chendong, who was standing in the middle of the court, suddenly said, "Then may I ask Lord Wang, if there is a kind of grain that can exceed 2 stones per mu, will it change the problem of food shortage?" Wang Zuo, who was asked, instinctively asked, "But I wonder what Magistrate Yang is talking about. What is the number of stones per mu that can exceed 2 stones per mu? What if I say it is 15 stones? After a few questions, Yang Chendong finally threw out the trump card that he had been planning for a long time. Silence, extreme silence. The court, which was originally bustling with noise, suddenly became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone held their breath at this moment, and some even widened their eyes and mouths. Their mouths looked like they could stuff a light bulb in. Swoosh! After extreme silence, there was rapid movement. Wang Zhuo, who was already in his 60s, suddenly became much more agile. He rushed in front of Yang Chendong in a big stride, and suddenly reached out his hands to grab Yang Chendong's hands with lightning speed. His eyes were filled with excitement as he asked, "Magistrate Yang, is what you said just now true?" At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Yang Chendong, waiting for his answer. If this person dared to say that it was a joke, it was likely that many people's spittle would immediately splatter on his face. It might even be exaggerated to say that it could drown him. Yang Chendong felt that his vigilance was already very high, but he was still firmly grabbed by Wang Zhuo. From this, it could be seen that the power of potential was really limitless. Seeing that Yang Chendong did not answer and was instead stuttering, Wang Zhuo was afraid that he was joking. He urged anxiously, "What do you mean by this and that, Magistrate Yang? Hurry up and say it." Yang Chendong blushed. "Lord Wang, you're hurting my hand." It was Wang Zhuo's turn to blush. He immediately loosened his grip, but his expression was still extremely nervous. "Hurry up and say it, is what you said just now true?" "Yes. But when I said 15 pickles per mu, it was referring to..." Before Yang Chendong could finish his sentence, one of the courtiers at the side said quickly, "It seems like this is an exception." "What a joke, how can there be such a high yield of grain in this world?" "That's not necessarily true. Even if it can occasionally reach the maximum yield of 15 pickles, it would usually be around 5 pickles. That's already very high." Some people spoke up for Yang Chendong. Yang Chendong, who was about to speak, suddenly stopped when he heard those words. Instead, he stood there and looked left and right, waiting for them to finish. "All of you, shut up." Wang Zhuo could not stand it anymore. As the Minister of Revenue of a country, money and grain were the things that he dealt with the most. And grain was the foundation of a country. Without grain, the soldiers would not be able to eat. How could they win a war? Without grain, the commoners would not be able to eat and could only rebel. Without grain, the country would not be a country and its foundation would not be stable. However, there was only so much land in a country, and the number of commoners was increasing year by year. In order to solve this problem, Wang Zhuo had thought of countless ways. But he had never found a solution. He had originally thought that this would be the only way in his lifetime and that this matter would be left to his descendants to solve. He had never thought that Yang Chendong would suddenly stand up and say that there was a grain yield of 15 pickles per mu. How could he not be overjoyed? This was a critical moment, and there were indeed other courtiers making sarcastic remarks. How could he not be angry? With Wang Zhuo's rebuke, the restless courtiers instantly quieted down. It was clear that Wang Zhuo still had a certain amount of prestige among the courtiers. Speaking of which, if they offended this person, he could casually make things difficult for them. When it came to asking for money, he would give them a little later or find an excuse to give them less. No one would be able to stand it. The crowd fell silent again. When Wang Zhuo looked at Yang Chendong, his eyes were filled with eagerness. "Governor Yang, they have all shut up. Please continue." "All right." Yang Chendong nodded. Then, a smile suddenly appeared on his face as he said, "The 15 pickles per mu I mentioned refers to a year of great calamity. Even in a normal year, it can reach 20 pickles. If it is a good year, it is not strange to reach 25 pickles." Boom! At this moment, the court could no longer quiet down. Everyone looked at Yang Chendong as if they had not heard clearly. The sound of heavy breathing could be heard everywhere. Do you need me to repeat it? Yang Chendong seemed to be used to this sudden change in atmosphere and asked Wang Zuo with a smile. Yes, yes. Wang Zuo nodded his head rapidly like a chick pecking at rice. I said that 15 pickles per mu is the lowest yield. It can reach 20 pickles, or even 25 pickles is possible. Yang Chendong said with absolute certainty. Chapter 54. This time, everyone perked up their ears and listened carefully. After confirming that they did not hear wrongly, all the officials became excited. The Minister of Rites, Hu Shao, reacted even faster. With a plop, he knelt on the ground and wept in the direction of Yingzong. Congratulations, Your Majesty. With this item, our great Ming dynasty will no longer be plagued by hunger. Following this, the country will be prosperous and the people will be at peace. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Congratulations. In an instant, all the officials except for Yang Chendong knelt on the ground. There were even some who were crying and laughing, as if they had gone crazy. Yingzong, who was sitting on the dragon throne, finally understood what had happened. After being the emperor for so many years, he naturally knew the importance of food. Now that he heard that there was a solution, he was naturally overjoyed. When he looked at Yang Chendong, his face was filled with joy. He wasn't angry at all because Yang Chendong didn't kneel down. Instead, he asked in a friendly voice, "But I wonder where is the grain that my beloved Yang Chendong mentioned?" When the words were spoken, all the officials looked at each other. They were so happy that they had forgotten where this item was. If they said that it was on the sea, it would be difficult for them. After all, everyone knew that Yang Chendong had brought the 3 godly mirrors from the sea for the palace. There were even many officials who went to look at them. They could clearly see the reflection of their hair. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a godly item. Fortunately, Yang Chendong didn't continue to stimulate everyone's nerves. He answered confidently, "It's in the Yang Manor 15 miles south of the city. However, because most of them are still in the growing period and haven't fully matured, it's not suitable to harvest them now." Hearing that the item was 15 li away from the capital, how could Yingzong and the officials wait? Even if we can't harvest it, we can at least take a look, right? Naturally, this question was asked by Wang Zuo. Of course you can. Not only can you look at them, but you can also harvest a small amount of them. You can even make some for everyone to taste and experience the taste of this new food. Since he had decided to offer the potatoes, naturally, Yang Chendong didn't have the slightest intention of hiding it. Regardless of whether he would be disappointed in the Great Ming Dynasty, or whether he would replace the Great Ming Dynasty, there was one thing that was always right, and that was that this thing was something that would benefit the common people. With it, more people would be able to avoid the end of starvation. Hearing that not only would they be able to harvest some, but they would also be able to taste it, the crowd became excited. Even Yingzong became very happy. Alright, since that's the case, let's go to Yang Village to take a look. Let's see the true auspicious item of our great Ming dynasty. The emperor gave the order, and naturally, all the officials agreed in unison. After that, the embroidered uniform guards and the eunuchs got busy. The emperor was going out of the palace, and this wasn't a small matter. The problem of the route and the responsibility of safety had to be clearly prepared. When Wang Zuo and the other important officials knew the location, how could they wait any longer? They kept urging them, and even ignored Wang Zhen's winking at the side, reminding the officials to be calm. Yingzong was 20 years old, and he was also someone who couldn't sit still. Seeing that this kind of preparation was going to take a long time, he immediately waved his hand and said, "There's no need to make such a big fuss. Zhen will be with the officials, so how can there be any danger? Let the embroidered uniform guards and the Eastern Palace guards each arrange 500 people to protect Zhen." Even though it was just a small matter, they still mobilized 1,000 people. This made Yang Chendong speechless. However, the officials once again knelt on the ground and praised the emperor for being wise. Yang Chendong could see that no matter what the emperor did, as long as it wasn't cutting off the heads of the officials, it was a wise thing to say. It was no wonder that most of the emperors were fooled. Under this kind of situation where they were praised every day, there were probably not many people who could withstand it. The officials were anxious, and Ingzong was also very anxious. He just changed into a set of golden dragon robes, which was more convenient for walking, and followed everyone out of the palace. In a moment, the streets were cleared, and the people of the warden's office of the 5 cities also followed to maintain the order of the city. The group of people left the Forbidden City, passed through Chengtian Gate, Daming Gate, and Zhengyang Gate, and reached the outer city. From Yongding Gate, they rushed to the Yangjia village. The large group of people was mighty, and the common people on the side of the road were very curious. What happened? Why did the emperor leave the palace? Beside the dragon carriage were civil and military officials. Everyone was in a hurry, and their footsteps were hurried, as if they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to keep up with the group. Could it be that something happened? Did the Walla attack us? The common people were still suspicious, but the group was moving faster and faster, until they disappeared from the capital, leaving behind a trail of dust, Yangjia village. According to the 6th young master's orders, Tiger's Mane had already made preparations, and several large pots were set up beside the manor. The cook, Yi Chioer, was so excited that her face was as red as an apple. Just now, Tiger's Mane had told her that she would be cooking for others today. It was just that these diners were not ordinary people, but were very likely to be the officials of the great Ming dynasty. It was even possible that the emperor would appear. Heavens! This was cooking for the emperor. Wouldn't that make her an imperial chef? At this moment, Yi Chioer was very excited. The old steward, Yang Hai, brought Yang Neng out of the manor. From time to time, he would instruct his son. The 6th young master is a very capable person, the kind of great talent that only appears once every few hundred years. In the future, you must follow the 6th young master and do your best. Yang Neng was a simple and honest person, and in fact, he had a steady and honest personality. After listening to his father's instructions countless times, he still spoke as if it was the first time he had heard them. "Father, don't worry. Neng will definitely do my best to serve the 6th young master." "No, it's the young master. Neng, didn't you see that Xiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, and even the cook, Yi Chioer, all call him the young master? Let me tell you, the Yang family will rely on the 6th young master in the future. Calling him the young master is not a bad thing, do you know? Even if others want to call him that, they don't have the qualifications." Yang Hai turned around and reprimanded his son. "But father, why do you still call him the 6th young master?" Yang Neng was confused. "Neng, Father is someone who follows the old master, and I'm old. I can't and don't have the energy to serve other masters. I can't change the way I call him the 6th young master, but you're different. Do you understand?" Yang Hai shook his head. If he were 20 years younger, why would he give the opportunity to follow Yang Chendong to someone else? Fortunately, Yang Neng was the son he was most satisfied with, so the benefits didn't flow out. In the end, the meat rotted in his family's pot. Oh! This time, Yang Neng didn't dare to refute. It wasn't that he didn't understand, but he still nodded to show that he understood. Just as the two of them were talking, dozens of riders came from afar. The leader of the riders was the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Zhangning. At that time, when he heard Yang Chendong say that there was an auspicious omen that could produce up to 10 to 20 dan of grain per mu, he was also shocked. Then he understood that this time, he benefited from it. In his happiness, he personally took the lead and wanted to come to Yang village to make arrangements. He didn't want to anger the emperor because the people in the village didn't know how to do things. That would be a big loss for a small gain. "They're here." Yang Hai saw the imperial soldiers in flying suits rushing over from afar. He hurriedly said to his son, Yang Ning, open the village gate and inform the people in the village that the family is not allowed to go out. Yang Ning ran to inform the others, leaving Yang Hai, Tiger's Mane, and Beta Persei to meet Hu Xiangning and the others. Hu Xiangning didn't notice the others, but when he saw Beta Persei, his pupils contracted. Although it had been a long time, he still remembered how Renbachian dealt with his two subordinates. It was as easy as an adult beating a child. Whoosh! Hu Xiangning took the lead and dismounted from the horse. I am the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Xiangning. Who will answer me? I am Yang Village's steward, Yang Hai. Greetings, Your Excellency. Yang Hai cupped his fist and greeted him. So it's Steward Yang. Hu Xiangning also cupped his fist and greeted him. Then he hurriedly said, the Emperor and the civil and military officials will be here soon. You should quickly make some preparations. The old and young in the village. Before Hu Xiangning could finish, Yang Hai had already answered with a smile, please rest assured, Lord Hu. The sixth young master has already made arrangements. Everything in the village has also been prepared. Please rest assured, Your Excellency. Hu Xiangning raised his right hand and patted his forehead with a wry smile. In his heart, he thought even more highly of Yang Chendong. This person had already planned everything. The beating up of Wang Go in the morning was probably also part of his plan. At such a young age, he already had such a strategy. Today, he was going to make a great contribution. From the looks of it, his future was limitless. If his daughter really married such a man, it would be a wonderful thing. Next, Hu Xiangning brought the Imperial Guard team into the village to carefully inspect it. After all, the Emperor had personally come. Nothing could be careless. When he saw that the manor was indeed in order, and there were even 10 farmers who were skilled in farming standing in front of the land that was used for harvesting in advance, he was completely at ease. Less than an hour later, a group of people arrived at the entrance of the Yang clan manor. The group of people surrounded the dragon carriage and passed through the entrance of the village, finally stopping in front of the village's land. A group of Eastern faction guards and Imperial guards completely surrounded this place to ensure that not even a bird could fly in. Ingzong, Zhu Qizhen, accompanied by his teacher, Wang Zhen, walked out of the dragon carriage and came to the field of crops. To be honest, this should be the first time Ingzong came to a field of crops. There was a trace of curiosity on his face. He pointed at the dry soil on the ground and asked, where is Minister Yang? Is this the place where the grain that can yield 15 dan per mu that you mentioned is here? Chapter 55. Replying to Your Majesty, that is correct. Yang Chendong forced his way through the crowd. There was nothing he could do about it. Just a moment ago, a few important officials had pulled him aside and asked him all sorts of questions. They asked him what the name of this thing was and how to eat it. It caused him to answer one question after another, and they all gave the same answer to everyone. However, there were still many people who did not speak to him. He did not know if those people were still sulking in their hearts. Ingzong nodded and then carefully looked at the ground beside his feet. The densely packed stems and leaves were already showing signs of withering. He asked curiously, beloved official Yang, are you talking about this thing? Looking at the stems and leaves, from afar, it looked like soybeans that were still in the planting stage. At this moment, not only Ingzong, but the other important officials were also puzzled. They did not understand. This thing did not look very densely packed, so how could it produce more than 15 dan per mu? Also, how was this thing eaten? Was it eaten like vegetable leaves? Yang Chendong knew that everyone was puzzled. He immediately walked forward in large strides. When he arrived in front of a thick stem and leaf, he pointed and said, this is the stem and leaf. It cannot be eaten. Of course, if you are hungry, you can eat it. However, the taste is not good. Its true secret lies at the bottom of the stem and leaf. Because it grows in the soil and is like a bean dozens of times bigger, it is called a potato. While explaining, Yang Chendong bent down and smiled at the crowd. With a slight force from his arm, the plant was lifted up along with its stem and leaves. At the roots that were pulled out of the soil, there were a few fist-sized earthy yellow fruits in front of everyone. Seeing the potato in Yang Chendong's hand, under the sunlight, the officials all sucked in a breath of cold air. He saw that there were 4 fist-sized potatoes on the roots, each weighing more than 1 jin. This was amazing. One plant could produce 4 jin, 1 mu of land with 1,000 plants. Wouldn't that mean 4,000 jin? In that case, wouldn't 1 dan be equal to 188 jin? Wouldn't that mean that 1 mu of land could produce more than 20 dan? At this moment, all of their doubts disappeared. While everyone was still in shock, only Yang Chendong still had a look of dissatisfaction on his face as he said, "There are only 4 of them, there should be 5 or 6 of them. Also, it's not fully mature yet. In another half a month, it will grow a little." As he spoke, Yang Chendong bent down and plucked another potato under the watchful eyes of the crowd. This time, there were 6 fruits on it, and they were not much smaller than the previous one. Only then did Yang Chendong nod his head in satisfaction. Boom! Among the ministers, after seeing this scene, some of them with weak hearts and weak endurance had already fainted on the ground. 6 fruits per stalk, that's 6 caddies. Doesn't this mean that the yield per mu can reach more than 30 dan? The fainted minister was carried away by the embroidered uniform guards, and the imperial physicians who had followed them out came forward to treat him. Those ministers who had not fainted had indeed squeezed forward one by one, wanting to personally pull out a stalk to try. Seeing that everyone was moving forward together, it was inevitable that the bean sprouts would be trampled on. At this moment, the Minister of Personnel, Wang Zhua, played his role as an old minister. "Everyone, stand back. If anyone dares to move forward, they will be executed." With this shout, everyone quieted down. Then, Wang Zhua knelt down in front of Ingzong with a face full of tears. "Your Majesty, please punish this minister for overstepping his authority." It's fine, it's fine. Beloved official Wang is just acting out of love. We understand, we understand." Ingzong laughed and reached out to help Wang Zhuo up. "Next, we will each pull out a potato and see who can pull out the most. How about it?" To be able to work together with the emperor was naturally something that all of the ministers wished for. Even if it was just harvesting crops together, it was also a kind of glory. For a moment, many envious gazes landed on Wang Zhua. Wang Zhua did not hear or see anything. Now that his gaze had landed on the potatoes, there was nothing else that could attract his attention. "This minister obeys." Wang Zhua bowed and replied. Ingzong laughed and looked at Yang Chendong on the side. "Beloved official Yang, will it be fine for us and official Wang to do this?" "It's fine, it's fine. There are only 10 mu of land here and it has been hastened. It was originally meant for the emperor and all of you to harvest everything. Just do as you please. In a while, when we leave, everyone can bring some back for their families to try." Yang Chendong laughed and had an indifferent expression. "Good. Then I will go with beloved official Wang first. In a while, everyone will work in pairs. Remember, you must not trample on or waste this heaven-bestowed item." Ingzong spoke heavenly words and labeled the potatoes as a heaven-bestowed item. For a moment, all of the ministers cheered loudly. On the other hand, Yang Chendong had a bitter expression. It was clearly his contribution. How did it become a heaven-bestowed item? Alright, even he was brought here by the heavens, including the entire warehouse. Then it was only right for the heavens to take some advantage. Moreover, Ingzong's luck was not bad. He actually pulled out 6 potatoes at once. Wang Zhuo was a bit worse. He only pulled out 5 fruits. However, this was enough for them to be excited. Reality had already proven that 20 dan per mu was the lowest yield. This way, the people of the world would not have to face the pain of starvation because of a lack of food. Once Ingzong and Wang Zuo left, Hu Xiao and Minister of War Kuang Yi walked forward. They became the second batch to pull out the potatoes. Yang Qindong did not pay attention to the actions of the ministers. Even if it was a bit of trampling and wasting, it did not affect the overall situation. Now was the time to let everyone have a taste of the potatoes. Walking in front of Ingzong and Wang Zuo, Yang Qindong said with a smile, "Emperor, Official Wang, you don't mind if this official uses the potatoes you pulled out to cook, right?" "Huh, of course we don't mind. We also want to have a taste of these potatoes." Ingzong laughed loudly. Wang Zuo's mood was also very good. "Alright, then I will bask in the Emperor's light and also have a taste of these delicious potatoes. Also, I ask Governor Yang to take this and cook it as well." "Oh, I shouldn't call you Governor Yang anymore. For this great merit, the Emperor will definitely reward you." It was unknown when Wang Zhen came over. He was also holding a potato with 6 fruits in his hand. Of course, no one knew whether he had pulled out the 6 pills himself or whether he had snatched them from someone else. Hearing Wang Zhen's sudden words, Yang Qindong naturally responded with a grateful smile. Perhaps only Wang Zhen would be able to take credit in front of the Emperor and be so straightforward. Even if the other ministers wanted to ask for credit, they would have to avoid it. "That's right." Ingzong, who was reminded, nodded heavily. "This time, beloved official Yang has made a great contribution. He should be greatly rewarded." Although it was said to be a great reward, Ingzong wasn't mentally prepared for it. He also didn't know how to promote Yang Qindong. Thus, his gaze fell on Wang Zuo and asked, "Beloved official Wang, in your opinion, how should we reward beloved official Yang?" This subject boldly suggests that he should be transferred to the Ministry of Revenue. Wang Zuo had a good impression of Yang Qindong. For him to be able to contribute such a good thing, it was enough to prove that he wasn't a selfish person. Of course, he wanted to promote him. First, he would transfer him to his own ministry. After that, he could make adjustments at any time. When he heard that he was going to be transferred to an actual position, Yang Qindong immediately shook his head and said, "Your Majesty, I don't dare to dare. This subject doesn't dare to be greedy. The appearance of the potato is because your Majesty's benevolence in governing the country was moved by the heavens. Thus, this auspicious item was bestowed to your Majesty. As for this subject, it was just a coincidence that I obtained this item. It really can't be considered a great merit. This subject is still young and still very playful. This is the first time I came to the capital and haven't seen the prosperity of this place. I still want to open a restaurant and enjoy the scenery of the world." Attributing the merit to the Emperor was something that should be done. What was that saying? If you made a contribution, it was the good of the leader. If you did something wrong, then it was because you couldn't understand the intentions of the leader. It had nothing to do with the leader. Yang Qindong gave the merit to Zhu Qizhen. This was something that should be done. As long as he didn't lack benefits, it was fine. He took the opportunity to say that he was still young and wanted to play for a few more years. Presumably, no one would not understand. Ingzong, who was standing at the side, was originally prepared to agree to Wang Zuo's request and send Yang Qindong to the Ministry of Revenue. But when he heard Yang Qindong's words, he suddenly felt elated. The appearance of the potato, this auspicious item, was actually because of his benevolence in governing the country. It seemed that he was a wise ruler. In an instant, his mood improved. He also knew that Yang Qindong was still young and wanted to play for another 2 years. Thus, he smiled and agreed. Since that's the case, Yang Qindong, listen to the decree. This subject Yang Qindong receives the decree. At this moment, Yang Qindong obediently knelt down. There was no other way. Under this kind of system, it was impossible for his knees not to go soft. Yang Chendong of the Yang family is bestowed the title of High Scholar. He will be promoted to horse washing, also known as First Horse, assisting the Crown Prince, effective immediately. Without saying too much, Zong considered for a moment and gave Yang Chendong a reward. Bestowing the title of High Scholar meant that Yang Chendong did not need to take the elementary scholar examination. Horse washing was a secondary class, rank 5 official. His specific duties were to be the Crown Prince's attendant. It was just that Zhu Qizhen did not have a Crown Prince yet. Although the imperial court did not set any rules, they had already reached an agreement. Only those who were rank 5 or above were allowed to do business. Zong made this decision in consideration of the fact that Yang Chendong would be opening a restaurant in the near future. He was paving the way for him. Being promoted from rank 9 to secondary class 5 was equivalent to being promoted by 7 ranks. In addition to the title of High Scholar, although it was still lacking compared to the contribution of the potato, it was not too far off. The most important thing was that Yang Chendong was still too young. He was only 18 years old, and there were many opportunities for him to be promoted in the future. From the looks of it, the rewards were quite generous. What Yang Chendong wanted was to be a rank 5 official. Only then would he be able to do things properly. As for the actual position, he had not thought about it. He also did not have the energy and time to do things for the imperial court. Now that he had gotten what he wanted, he immediately knelt down and thanked the emperor. Chapter 56. However, at the same time, he also asked for an imperial edict. In order to cultivate potatoes, he needed to live in the Yang family manor and could not attend court unless there was something important. Regarding this, Zong was in a good mood and naturally agreed. He was just a minor class 5 official, so there was no need for him to attend court. As for living outside the capital, since he liked it, he could do as he pleased. This was also Yang Chendong's plan for the future. After receiving the imperial edict, no one would be able to urge him to live in the capital. This way, he would have a lot of autonomy in terms of his safety. In other words, he would have more protection. Like a carp leaping over the dragon's gate, Yang Chendong had accomplished something that others couldn't do for many years in an instant. When he stood up, there were waves of congratulations around him. He also cupped his fists towards his colleagues to express his gratitude. Then, he laughed and said, "Since everyone is here today, let's have a taste of the potatoes." This official has already arranged for the kitchen maids to make many types of potatoes. Good. Everyone was very happy to have such a high yield of potatoes. This was a great thing that benefited the country and the people. Moreover, it had nothing to do with anyone's benefit. Naturally, everyone was happy. However, there were also some shrewd officials who were thinking about how to befriend Yang Chendong and then get more seeds to cultivate in their own manors. This way, they would not have to worry about using money to buy food in the future. The officials all had their own plans. Minister of Revenue Wang Zhua had already seen through them and proposed to the emperor that the seeds should be distributed reasonably. Otherwise, once these seeds were spread outside the country, the enemies would become stronger and threaten the safety of the great Ming dynasty. This was an experienced schemer. At the end of the Ming dynasty, the 8 great Jin merchants of Shaanxi had sent large amounts of military equipment and food to Liaodong to sell to the slaves Jian. This caused them to become stronger and stronger. In the end, the great Ming dynasty had to spend a large amount of military resources every year, causing the national treasury to be empty. They had no choice but to eat from the common people, causing the peasant uprising to become more and more powerful. This caused the great Ming dynasty to collapse internally, creating an opportunity for the slaves Jian to enter the Ming dynasty. Now that the potato production was so high, if the seeds were to be spread out, once Walla and the others got their hands on them, they would have enough food to recruit more soldiers. As a result, the bigger they became, the more of a threat they would pose to the great Ming dynasty. Although Ingzong was young and inexperienced, he knew the importance of potatoes. He looked at Wang Zhou and asked, "Does Minister Wang have any ideas?" "Your Majesty, there is no way to completely put an end to it. Just now, I asked Sir Horse Washing Poplar, and he said that the planting of potatoes is very convenient. You only need to wait for the potatoes to mature and sprout before planting them. Next year, you will be able to obtain a large number of fruits. Unless all the potatoes were kept to themselves, they would inevitably be taken by others. And such a good thing should be planted all over the country. Only when it's widely used can more people benefit." Wang Zhou shook his head. There was no such thing as guarding against thieves for 1,000 days in this world. Even if you wanted to guard against them, you had to be able to guard against them first. Initially, Zhang Xian thought that Wang Zhou had a good idea since he had said so much. But after listening for a while, it seemed that there was no solution. Zhang Xian's expression couldn't help but become ugly as he asked, "Since that's the case, what does Minister Wang mean?" Wang Zhou hesitated for a moment. He knew that what he was going to say next might offend some people. But when he thought about the great Ming's eternal prosperity, it seemed that he could only offend them. Thus, he said, "Your Majesty, this subject wishes to ask you to issue a decree. Before any diplomatic mission leaves the border, they must be checked to see if they are carrying potatoes. Once they are found, all the envoys will be detained and arrested as spies. But if they are found to be smuggling potatoes out of the border, they will be heavily punished, and 9 generations of their families will be punished." When he said 9 generations of their families will be punished, Wang Zhou's heart skipped a beat. He knew that this was a bit too ruthless and the punishment was too heavy. But when he considered the impact that potatoes could bring, he still felt that this kind of punishment wasn't excessive. A person who didn't even care about the country could no longer be called a person. Thus, any punishment wouldn't be excessive. When Wang Zhou said this, he was shocked. When Ingzong heard this, his eyes suddenly widened. However, it only took an instant for him to recover. The Great Ming was the Great Ming of the Zhou family. If this country was destroyed, perhaps the officials could continue to be officials after defecting, but he would no longer be able to become the emperor. Thus, if potatoes were to spread, the one who would suffer the greatest loss would be him. What was there that he couldn't be heartless about? "All right, we understand. After we return to the palace, write a decree and announce it to the world." Ingzong, Zhu Qizhen, decisively made a decision. "Your Majesty is wise." After Wang Zhou finished reporting this matter, he immediately felt his body relax. At this moment, it was as if more than half of the strength in his body had been sucked out. The potatoes and pork ribs are ready. Following Yang Chendong's shout, the fragrance from the big pot immediately spread out for 3 li. It attracted the hundreds of officials who had just finished harvesting the potatoes to gather around like gluttonous worms. Wash the pork ribs and potatoes and prepare them. Put the pork ribs into the pot and add cooking wine. Then, turn on the fire and cook them. Drain the cooked pork ribs and set them aside. Add oil and pepper into the pot and stir-fry the pork ribs. Then, add soy sauce and other seasoning. Then, pour the pork ribs into the pot and stir-fry the potatoes. Finally, remove the MSG from the pot. The hot and sour onion shredded potatoes are ready. Cut the potatoes and soak them in water. Peel the onions and wash them and cut them into shreds. Wash the green and red peppers and cut them into shreds. Pour oil into the wok and stir-fry the chives, ginger, garlic and dried chilies. Pour in the shredded potatoes and stir-fry them for a while. Add in some water and stir-fry the onions. Add in soy sauce, sugar and a suitable amount of salt and stir-fry them. Pour in some balsamic vinegar and stir-fry them evenly. Then, add in some sesame oil and stir-fry them. After the 2 potato dishes, 1 meat and 1 vegetable, were done. There were chopped pepper potato slices, fried potato strips, hot and sour shredded potatoes, eggplant stewed potatoes, braised potato chicken, rice potato cakes, spicy dry pot potato slices, honey, juicy potatoes, scallion potato stir-fry, crispy fried potatoes, minced meat, and so on. Steaming the whole potato could also satisfy one's hunger. For many people who tasted potatoes for the first time, they felt that it was a kind of delicacy. A single potato could be used to make nearly 20 different dishes. While everyone ate heartily, they also praised it loudly. In addition, the cooking skills of the kitchen maid, Yi Qiu'er, was not bad. Together with the MSG that Yang Chendong made, which was only available in Jianghu and had not spread to the capital, everyone ate until their mouths were full of oil. Even Ingzong ate 2 bowls of rice and a steamed potato with the dishes. If it wasn't for Wang Zhen, who was serving beside him, reminding him, he might have eaten another bowl. After eating so much, Ingzong said with a joyful expression, "We are looking forward to when beloved official Yang's restaurant will be open for business." Replying, "Your Majesty, it will be open soon. It should be open within a month. When that time comes, Your Majesty can come and give us your opinion if you have time." Yang Chendong chuckled. He did not fight with the other officials to eat the potatoes. To him, this thing had been eaten for decades and had long lost its freshness. Thus, he had been playing the role of a waiter. When he saw an empty plate on the outdoor table, he would order someone to serve it. He was extremely busy. His reply to Ingzong was not perfunctory. Before they came, Yang Hai had already chosen a location for the restaurant. Even the new manager had been found. It was his cousin, Yang Fu. When Yang Fu was in Jianghu Prefecture, he had worked very happily with Yang Chendong and earned a lot of money. Seeing that the 6th young master was about to go to the capital, he was also tempted and wanted to discuss it with him. Yang Chendong was just thinking about who would be the most suitable person to manage the restaurant. When he saw Yang Fu jump out, he immediately agreed and hired Yang Fu to manage the restaurant with 10% of the shares. Yang Fu knew that the capital was not like Jianghu. The human relations there were complicated and it was not something that a merchant like him could understand. With the banner of 6th cousin, it would be much easier to do some things. Furthermore, 10% of the shares was not a small amount. He immediately accepted the agreement and brought Yang Chendong's blueprint to the capital. Only after coming to the capital and seeing those blueprints did Yang Fu realize just how extravagant his 6th cousin was. Just the initial investment had reached 50,000 taels, and just the renovation alone had cost him another 100,000 taels. Just what was he planning to build? Was he going to build a small palace? Of course, Yang Fu did not understand. Only when the required items were brought into the restaurant did he realize how ignorant he was before. Only now did he know how much his 10% share was worth. As the saying went, there was no harm if there was no comparison. At this moment, he realized that the Four Seas restaurant in Jianghu Prefecture was as simple as a child playing house. Putting aside the restaurant, Ingzong heard Yang Chendong's invitation. Thinking about how the other party had made such a great contribution, he should satisfy this small request. He immediately nodded and said, "All right, if there is time, we will go and take a look." With just this sentence, the other officials naturally understood what was going on. In the future, if they wanted to find trouble with anyone, they shouldn't go looking for trouble with the Yang clan restaurant. If they didn't handle it well, they might end up offending the emperor. Yang Chendong was still busy. He even called for everyone to bring back some of the potatoes they had dug up so that they could let their families have a taste. This was naturally met with cheers from the officials. Ingzong finished eating first and prepared to return. He called for Yang Chendong and said, "Beloved official Yang, I will leave a group of embroidered uniform guards in the eastern depot here to help you guard the potatoes that have not been harvested yet." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Yang Chendong naturally knew that since the potatoes had been exposed, it was no longer his problem alone. As such, he had already mentally prepared himself for this. Very good. Satisfied with Yang Qindong's attitude, Ingzong continued, as for how many potato seeds to keep and how to distribute them, I will have Sir and the rest of you discuss them together. Right, what is the name of your restaurant? Replying Your Majesty, the Immortal Abode. Yang Qindong replied confidently. Chapter 57. Immortal Abode. What a good name. Ha ha ha. Ingzong was stunned at first, but then he began to laugh heartily. Very good. When the Immortal Abode opens for business, we will personally visit and taste the delicacies of your restaurants. This subject will definitely welcome Your Majesty's arrival with open arms. How could Yang Qindong not see that Ingzong was giving him face? Ingzong had only said that he had time, but now that he had confirmed it, his attitude had changed. He immediately knelt on the ground again and shouted, "Long live Your Majesty!" The other officials also saw this scene clearly. They couldn't help but look at Yang Qindong with envy. This person was only 18, right? Back then, they were still studying when they were at this age. Some of them didn't even pass the Xiaozai examination. However, the other party was already a secondary grade 5 official and even received the favor of the emperor. It was really infuriating to compare oneself with others. Ingzong left the Yang clan manor under the protection of a group of guards. However, the other officials didn't leave. Some of them still hadn't eaten their fill, while others were waiting. They were waiting for Yang Qindong to fulfill his promise and bring back a few extra potatoes to share with their families. Since he had already promised, Yang Qindong naturally kept his word. He arranged for Tiger's Mane, Yang Hai, Yang Neng, and the others to gather the potatoes first, then distribute them according to their rank. Every official received at least 5 kilograms, and if that wasn't enough, they could just scavenge more. At the very least, he still had the final say on how to distribute the potatoes. Moreover, this kind of opportunity to make friends with the officials was rare. How could Yang Qindong give it up so easily? Because of Yang Qindong's magnanimity, the officials all returned satisfied. Even the Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, who had always been known as a miser, was all smiles. Before leaving, he said to Yang Qindong, "Yang Shima, you have to take good care of those potatoes. Also, my Ministry of Revenue's plantation needs 10,000 mu of potato seeds. This cannot be discounted." Don't worry, don't worry. Yang Qindong patted his chest and promised. Potatoes were still a rare commodity in the Great Ming Dynasty, and they had already been planted in the surrounding areas of Crimson City. Once they ran out of seeds, they could just plant them from there. Furthermore, there were still bags of potatoes piled up like mountains in the big warehouse. If there was a need, they could be taken out immediately. The biggest advantage of the big warehouse was that everything placed there was very fresh. There was no expiration date at all. This allowed Yang Qindong to use the things there without worry. As long as he didn't take them out, they would be as good as new. With Yang Qindong's guarantee, Wang Zhua left satisfied. All the officials left, leaving only Wang Zhen and his disciples strolling around nearby. From time to time, he would arrange for the people of the Eastern faction guards to guard all the key points. Other than the people of Yang village, no one else was allowed to casually approach. Otherwise, they would be directly arrested and imprisoned. Wang Zhen seemed to be patiently giving instructions. Yang Qindong smiled at all of this. He knew that this wasn't because Wang Zhen was responsible for his work, but because he wanted to chat with him and get some benefits. He didn't want to complicate matters. More importantly, Yang Qindong's faction was still rather weak, and he urgently needed to find an ally. If Wang Zhen could be of help, he didn't mind sharing some benefits with him. Of course, this still depended on whether this person was tactful or not. Otherwise, if he was really provoked, he could just walk out of the capital. At that time, the heavens were vast, but there would be far too many places for him to stay. Eunuch Wang, would you like to enter the study of the manor? Seeing that Wang Zhen's gaze had already swept over him no less than 5 times, Yang Chendong knew that it was about time. If he continued to endure, he might burn. Oh, Ma Yang is too polite. This duke just happens to be a little thirsty. Wang Zhen tactfully gave Wang Chong a way out, and then the two of them laughed at each other before making their way into the Yang clan manor. In the study, Yang Chendong dismissed everyone, not even Xiaoyin. He sat across from Wang Zhen and assumed a negotiating stance. Wang Zhen had been in power for many years and had seen all sorts of situations. He was unhurried, lightly nodding as he tasted the tea leaves in his hand. He appeared to be enjoying himself. The tea leaves that Yang Chendong could bring out weren't very good, only a little better than those sold on the streets. They couldn't enter the eyes of someone like Wang Zhen, who had seen many top-quality tea leaves. But sometimes, what was important in tasting tea was not the tea, but the mood and atmosphere. It was clear that this person was enjoying the atmosphere, so he naturally ignored the quality of the tea leaves. When dealing with smart people, there was no need for unnecessary words. Yang Chendong didn't bother with any boring opening remarks, getting straight to the point. Eunuch Wang, many thanks for your kind words just now. This is a small token of my appreciation. As he spoke, a small box was pushed in front of Wang Zhen. Wang Zhen was indeed a smart person. He didn't even ask what it was. He reached out and opened it. Inside was a contract for 10% of the Immortal Abode's shares. It was only 10%. Wang Zhen didn't object, nor did he agree. He just casually sized up Yang Chendong, clearly waiting for an explanation. Eunuch Wang, I won't hide it from you. The Immortal Abode's total investment is estimated to be no less than 300,000 taels, perhaps even more. Wang Zhen, who had always been calm and collected, was startled by his first sentence. His twitching eyebrows had already proven everything. It was just a restaurant. How could there be such a large investment? Wang Zhen clearly didn't believe it. However, he also knew that Yang Chendong was a smart person. He wouldn't lie to him about something like this. He could send people to investigate at any time. Was Yang Chendong a smart person? At the very least, today's events had proven that the other party was very smart. But he had still mentioned the number of people. Didn't that mean that there really was such a large investment? As Wang Zhen's expression changed again and again, Yang Chendong bitterly smiled and shook his head. There are some things that even if I don't say, Eunuch Wang will be able to find out. So, allow me to make some moves first. The Immortal Abode is located on the busiest street between the Zhengyang Gate and the Great Ming Gate. Not only that, but I've also had people buy up the entire street, which has more than doubled in size. Just the main hall alone can accommodate more than 1,000 people eating together. Just the investment and purchase of the land alone cost quite a bit. I don't know how many days it will take to earn it back. Regarding this point, Wang Zhen expressed his agreement. As the Great Ming Dynasty grew stronger and stronger, the direct result was that the price of land in the capital had skyrocketed. It was truly a yearly increase in price. This was also because the location was chosen to be between the outer city and the inner city. If it was all in the inner city, then just the investment of this piece of land, and such a large scale, would probably cost at least 100,000 taels of silver. Seeing Wang Zhen lightly nod, Yang Chendong smiled and continued, just now, I was talking about the dining hall on the first floor that can accommodate 1,000 people at once. There are no less than 50 private rooms around it. There were even 100 private rooms and rooms upstairs. Just the renovation alone would cost at least 100,000 taels of silver. Oh, that's right, I forgot to tell Eunuch Wang that the renovation this time is different from the past. I've used transparent glass and new furniture from outside. These things are very expensive, and just transporting them will cost a lot. Transparent glass? Wang Zhen couldn't help but ask in shock. The image of a mirror flashed through his mind, and he excitedly asked, "Is Yang Shima talking about a mirror?" "No." Yang Chendong shook his head. "Mirrors can reflect images and clearly reflect people. Glass is transparent and doesn't have the function of a mirror. However, it does have the function of isolation and allows people to see clearly without hindrance." "Oh, I'm afraid I can't explain this point in a short time. When the renovation is done, Eunuch Wang will naturally be able to see it. However, it is true that this is a new thing. It's a pity that the capital is limited. Otherwise, would really want to get more. That would be a good time to make a fortune." Speaking of this, Yang Chendong constantly smacked his lips with a look of regret. "Capital? How much do you need?" Hearing that it was a new thing that could make a lot of money, Wang Zhen's interest was piqued. If it could be as magical as a mirror, then it would definitely be a good business. The speed at which he could make money was imaginable. He wanted to get a foot in. Who would complain that the money was too little? Well, if you want to buy in bulk, you'll need at least 5 million taels. Of course, if you have more, that would be even better. That way, you'll be able to make even more money. Yang Chendong furrowed his brows, as if he had only come up with this conclusion after careful consideration. As soon as he heard that 5 million taels was barely enough, Wang Zhen immediately gave up on the idea of investing. What kind of joke was this? Not to mention whether or not he had the money on hand, just the current Yang Chendong wasn't enough for him to feel at ease. If he suddenly handed over so much money to the other party, wouldn't all his years of hard work go to waste? When Yang Chendong saw that the other party wasn't moving, he didn't have any intention of persuading him further. Those who didn't know would naturally think that glass was very expensive. However, since the glass factory in Crimson City could already produce it in bulk, the cost of producing it was extremely low. It was just that outsiders didn't know much about it. After talking about the land and renovations, Yang Chendong continued, "There will be a large performance stage in the center of the Immortal abode. At that time, there will be storytelling, singing and dancing performances, and I can guarantee that they will all be new songs. When the time comes, just imagine how grand it will be. It won't be an exaggeration to say that even a single ticket will be hard to come by. In addition, there will be unique delicacies. You've already tasted potatoes today. Just this one dish alone can be used to make almost 20 different dishes. If you add in other delicacies, I'm sure the taste will be enough to make one salivate. Of course, the cost of performing the songs and dancing won't be low either. A rough estimate puts it at several tens of thousands of taels of silver. In addition, there will be the Yang family's Beyond Heaven Trading Company next to the restaurant. They will sell many things that the great Ming Dynasty doesn't have, so they'll need to invest first. Even if they don't buy a lot of goods, the cost will still be no less than 100,000 taels of silver. All in all, 300,000 taels of silver is still barely enough. Furthermore, Eunuch Wang doesn't need to take out anything. Chapter 58. After saying this, Yang Chendong took a sip from his teacup. His lips trembled a few times, giving off the impression that he was extremely distressed. If there really was an investment of 300,000 taels, giving away 10% of the profits for free was truly not a small sum. Roughly estimating, he would receive at least 3,000 taels of silver every month. This allowed Wang Zhen to understand Yang Chendong's boldness. Then what do you need this eunuch to do? Wang Zhen didn't believe that a free lunch would fall from the heavens. If there were no benefits for the other party, even if it was a temporary alliance, it wouldn't last long. Eunuch Wang is straightforward. What I need is safety. I need Eunuch Wang to ensure that the Immortal Abode and World Heaven Trading Company are absolutely safe. At the very least, no one can cause trouble here. In addition, the bulk of the goods are coming from the barbarians, and I have already ordered them to be shipped to the nearest Tientsin guard. This way, the journey from there to the capital will be safe. I hope that eunuch Wang can guarantee it. Of course, the brothers will also pay for the tea. Yang Chendong was waiting for Wang Zhen to ask him this question. One had to get something in return. This was just a transaction. With Yang Chendong's current strength, once he revealed his fangs, it wouldn't be difficult to ensure his safety. However, these were his private soldiers, and he couldn't reveal them to others, at least not yet. Wang Zhen listened to Yang Chendong's request and pondered for a moment. He felt that this was not a difficult matter. He only needed to inform the Eastern faction guards and the brocade guards so that no one would cause trouble. This way, he would be able to earn at least 3,000 taels of silver a month, which would be 30 to 40,000 taels of silver a year. No matter how he looked at it, it was worth it. Okay, it's a deal. Eunuch Wang is straightforward. Come, this lowly official will use tea in place of wine to toast you. Yang Chendong laughed in satisfaction. Good. Wang Zhen seemed to be in a good mood. In his eyes, Yang Chendong was a god of wealth. Being on good terms with him was a matter of mutual benefit, so he was naturally happy. And from start to finish, Yang Chendong didn't show any intention of raising his rank. He just acted like a merchant, and this made Wang Zhen feel even more at ease. Wang Zhen liked power and money. But of course, the thing he loved the most was still power. In this aspect, Yang Chendong did not have the slightest intention to compete with him. There were only benefits and no disputes, so Wang Zhen could naturally rest assured. Satisfied, Wang Zhen left. Yang Chendong looked at Xiao Yin, who came to clean up the table, and said, "Go, throw away that set of teacups." Pointing at the teacups that Wang Zhen had used, the sixth young master's face was filled with disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was still too weak and he didn't want the people of the great Ming dynasty to suffer because of him, Yang Chendong wouldn't have done such a thing so casually. Yes, Xiao Yin replied obediently. Then, she pursed her lips and smiled. Clearly, she found the sixth young master's pettiness funny. Oh, you've grown up. You actually dare to laugh at this young master. Since that's the case, are you ready to be spanked? He noticed Xiao Yin's gentle laughter. More importantly, she was laughing beautifully towards the end. Her entire body was trembling, causing her towering breasts to tremble as well. It was a powerful visual impact, and Yang Chendong couldn't help but feel his hands itch. He wanted to punish her using her parents. The so-called family law, which was what Yang Chendong said himself, was to spank her. Ever since he accidentally spanked Xiao Yin's but while playing around, Yang Chendong liked the feeling of being fleshy. Xiao Yin didn't seem to be annoyed, and she even provoked the sixth young master for no reason. In this way, domestic discipline became popular. One was willing to be spanked, and the other was willing to be spanked. It was truly amusing. At this moment, Yang Chendong wanted to use domestic discipline again. To put it bluntly, it was because his hands itched. When she heard about domestic discipline, Xiao Yin's pretty face turned red. While she was delighted, she still said, "Young master, don't." Xiao Yin knows she was wrong. Do you know? It's too late now, ha ha ha. As he spoke, Yang Chendong walked closer with a big grin on his face like a big bad wolf. Little White Rabbit didn't seem to have any intention of running away. Instead, she stood there foolishly, as if she was at his mercy. Her intention of asking for a spanking couldn't be more obvious. Yang Chendong knew that he could once again satisfy his touch, and a mischievous smile appeared on his face. However, all of this was lost as Tiger's Mane suddenly appeared. Tiger's Mane also knew that this wasn't the right time to appear, but he had no choice. Outside the Yang manor, the young master, the second young master, and the rest of the Yang family had all arrived. They wanted to see the sixth young master. These were all direct descendants of the Yang family. Tiger's Mane didn't dare to stop them. "What's wrong?" Seeing Tiger's Mane appear, Yang Chendong immediately regained his calm expression. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he looked like a completely different person from when he was fooling around with Xiao Yin. Young Master, the second Young Master, and the other Young Masters and Young Miss have all arrived. They are currently outside the manor. The people from the East faction guards have stopped them. Tiger's Mane lowered his head. As Yang Chendong's radiance grew brighter and brighter, his respect and reverence for the sixth young master grew with each passing day. Tiger's Mane no longer spoke as casually as before. Big brother and the others are finally willing to come? Yang Chendong let out a light snort. They were all blood-related brothers, and they were all snobbish. Yesterday, he was only a 9th-rank official, and they all said that they were too busy to show up. Now that he was a 5th-rank official, he was even higher than them. They immediately came over. This was the reality of society. Although he was somewhat displeased, Yang Chendong still decided to meet them. After all, they were still his family. Since he had taken over Yang Chendong's body, he naturally wanted to return some benefits. This way, he would be able to face the world calmly after 100 years. Alright, tell the people from the East faction guards that this is the young master's elder brother and elder sister. They are not to stop them. Yes. Tiger's Mane respectfully replied and turned to leave. Xiao Yin immediately went to the main hall and began to clean up the tables and chairs. Outside the Yang family manor, Yang Gong, Yang Rang, Yang Shi, Yang Yang, Yang Guifang, and the 5 brothers of the Yang family had all arrived. Standing at the side were 3rd sister Yang Jing, 4th sister Yang Mei, 5th sister Yang Li, and 6th sister Yang Qin. Aside from eldest sister Yang Fei and 7th sister Yang Duo, all of his family members were present. At this moment, everyone was standing outside the Yang manor. Seeing the people from the East faction guards blocking their way, they did not dare to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. They only glanced at the manor from time to time, expressing their eagerness to see 6th brother. Finally, amidst their anticipation, Tiger's Mane, dressed as a study companion, appeared. As soon as he approached, he said to the head of the East faction guards in charge of security, "These are the 6th young master's elder brother and elder sister. Please let them in." With the Yang manor's permission, the East faction guards let them in. Only then did Yang Gong and the others have the opportunity to enter the manor. Once they were free from the East faction guard surveillance, the Yang brothers' expressions became somewhat arrogant, especially 2nd brother Yang Rang. He said with an unhappy expression, "You must be Tiger's Mane. What is little 6th brother busy with? We are all here. Does he not know how to come out and welcome us? Why did he send a servant like you?" As the head of the Ministry of Rights and a 6th-rank official, Yang Rang's authority was growing by the day. When he met Yang Gong, it was inevitable that he would argue with him, let alone a servant like Tiger's Mane. Tiger's Mane did not say anything. In his eyes, there was only one master, and that was Yang Chendong, the 6th young master. As for the others, he would not pay attention to them. He did not interact much with them to avoid unnecessary suspicion. After complaining, he did not receive any response. At this moment, he just happened to walk to the front of the Yang manor's main entrance. Yang Rang felt a little embarrassed and said somewhat angrily, "Tiger's Mane, this official is talking to you. Do you hear me? You don't have any manners. Just stand there. You can leave when you know you're wrong." In his anger, Yang Rang treated this place as his own home. He scolded Tiger's Mane and the others without any psychological pressure. Tiger's Mane's footsteps became hesitant after being scolded like this. Then, he remembered that Yang Rang was the 2nd brother of the 6th young master. In the end, he stopped in his tracks and stood there without moving. He really looked like he was going to admit his mistake. The people guarding the main entrance of the Yang manor were Yang Wu and Yang Lu. When they saw Tiger's Mane being stopped, the two of them looked at each other. Then, Yang Wu quietly disappeared, leaving Yang Lu standing there alone to keep watch. Second brother, sixth brother has been busy all day and is very tired. Besides, we are family. It is understandable that he did not come out to welcome us. There is no need to be so serious. Sixth sister, Yang Qin, who had always been disliked and disliked by others, saw that Yang Rang was taking advantage of the situation again. She immediately spoke with displeasure. What? You say that I am serious? Sixth sister, who do you think you are? You are the only one in our family who married a businessman. Do you know how much face you have brought to our ancestors? Now, you still have the face to speak here? Yang Rang was well educated and worked in the Ministry of Rights. His language skills were not to be underestimated. With just one sentence, he forced Yang Qin to be at a loss. Then, tears formed in her eyes and she looked like she was about to cry. Second brother, we are all family. Why do you have to speak to sixth sister like this? Eldest brother, Yang Gong, could not stand it anymore and wanted to mediate. Eldest brother, it is not that I want to criticize you, but your temper is too good. That is why our Yang family is not what it used to be. If you ask me, sometimes you have to take care of people. Otherwise, without rules, there will be no order or propriety. At that time, we will only be bullied. Yang Rang didn't care about his elder brother Yang Gong at all. In his eyes, his big brother was born well. He was the eldest son of the Yang family. That was why he was a sixth-rank official. If it was him, he would be at least a fifth-rank official. Well said. A voice suddenly sounded from within the manor. Yang Chendong, who was dressed in green, strode out. Second brother is right. Without rules, there will be no order or decorum. Otherwise, we will only be bullied. But sixth brother wants to ask, previously when third sister, fourth sister, and seventh sister were bullied, dare I ask, what were you doing? Chapter 59. It was a slap in the face. Yang Chendong had just stepped forward when he gave the men of the Yang family a slap in the face. His interrogative expression made the Yang brothers' faces turn red. The fourth brother, Yang Yang, had his head lowered. Just yesterday, he was still doubting Yang Chendong for not being able to control seventh sister. But they had gone to beat Wang Go early in the morning, and had even given his outrageous mother, Lady Yan, a horsewhip. Yet nothing had happened to him until now. Yang Chendong had used his actions to show his determination to protect the rights of the Yang family. In contrast, as the fourth brother, not only did he not support him, he even doubted him. Now that he thought about it, it really made him blush with shame. Not only the fourth brother, but even the eldest brother, third brother, and fifth brother's faces were flushed red. They clearly knew that they were in the wrong in this matter and could not refute anything. However, only the second son, Yang Rang, said with an indifferent expression, Lil, 6, you're wrong. Married women are like spilled water. Since they're already married, they're no longer part of the Yang family. What does it have to do with us whether their life is good or bad? Nonsense. With a furious shout, Yang Chendong was really angry this time. His shout shocked the crowd. At the same time, they were also unable to comprehend his shout. Yang Chendong had become a county official at the age of 13 and was now personally bestowed the status of a high scholar by the emperor. How could someone with such a status speak such filthy words? All the brothers and sisters could not understand. Only Qiao Yin, Tiger's Mane, and the other Yang family servants had a matter-of-fact expression. Their master should be like this. When he should be rewarded, when he should be punished, when he should be happy, when he should be scolded, when he should be scolded, he should be scolded. The scene quieted down, but after 2 breaths of time, Yang Rang, whose face was already filled with anger, suddenly jumped up and roared at Yang Chendong, Little Sixth, what did you just say? You dare to be so disrespectful to your second brother, do you know that you should be beaten? As he shouted, Yang Rang really rushed towards the place where Yang Chendong was standing. However, Tiger's man, Yang Wu, and Yang Lu had already formed a human wall in front of Yang Rang, making it impossible for him to get close to the sixth young master. Unable to rush forward, Yang Rang could not vent the anger in his heart. Instead, he bared his fangs and brandished his claws at the three Yang family guards. In just a few moments, his clothes were torn open, making him look like a village woman throwing a tantrum in a fight. Enough, the three of you step aside. I want to see how this young master's second brother will attack an official of the imperial court. Oh, right. Yang Chendong shouted angrily when he saw how flustered and exasperated second Yang was. What's more, he's a court official who's one level higher than him. Once an order was given, it had to be carried out. After Tiger's man and the other two heard this, they dodged to the side. Yang Rang, who was not prepared at all, missed and fell to the ground with a thud, making intimate contact with the ground. Pfft! The Yang family's sisters finally could not hold it in anymore and covered their mouths as they chuckled. After being laughed at, Yang Rang felt humiliated. He quickly got up and wanted to rush towards Yang Chendong. Yang Chendong had long seen through Yang Rang's appearance of strength. He sneered, "Come on, try and hit me. Let's see if the East faction guards outside will arrest you and send you to the Imperial Edict." Yang Rang, who was about to make a move, immediately collapsed like a deflated ball when he heard about the East faction guards and the Imperial Edict. He stood there, not knowing whether he should move or not. Okay, we're all brothers. It was just a joke. Let's forget about it. At this time, Yang Gong began to stand up and play the good guy again. Yang Gong's personality was like this. Even though he saw his second brother suffer, he was still very happy. However, he did not forget his father's words before his death, that the Yang family should be united. As the eldest brother, all he could do was follow his father's orders. Everyone was used to their eldest brother's living mud, so naturally, they did not feel that there was anything wrong with his words. However, Yang Chendong was not used to it. He shook his head and said, "No. This young master is not joking. I'm asking you. Third sister, fourth sister, and seventh sister suffered in the in-laws' house. Why didn't you do anything about it? Is it really like what second brother said, that a married girl is like water that has been poured out? Is there really no need to ask about it? If that's the case, why do they still have the surname Yang? Is the affection that we grew up with gone? This is clearly a sign of cold-bloodedness and incompetence. If that's the case, now that we have separated from each other, there is no need for us to interact with each other or help each other." Yang Chendong took the opportunity to express his own opinion. If it was yesterday, Yang Chendong dared to say this, his brothers would definitely have reprimanded him, saying that it was easy for him to speak while standing. However, after what happened in the Wang family this morning, no one dared to say this. They already knew that their sixth brother was a man of his words. In comparison, they were indeed much more incompetent. At this moment, all they could do was to lower their heads. Even the second brother, Yang Rang, calmed down a lot. He thought about how Yang Chendong beat up Wang Go in the morning. He thought about how this person was greatly favored by the emperor, and was even a secondary class 5th rank official, one rank higher than him. He thought that the current little six could no longer be treated as a younger brother. No one spoke. Only third sister, Yang Jing, and fourth sister, Yang Mei, stood there crying quietly. Just before this morning, they were still living in their in-laws' house, where each day felt like a year. However, when Wang Go's matter came out, their situation changed. Especially when their in-laws sent people to investigate. They learned that Wang Go and his mother, Madame Yen, were beaten because they were not good to Yang Chendong's seventh sister, Yang Duo. Instantly, they became concerned about their madams. When they learned that their madam wanted to go to the Yang family village to see their sixth brother, no one dared to stop her. They immediately agreed. This was the general trend. Yang Chendong beat Wang Go and his mother. Not only he did not receive any punishment from the emperor, on the contrary, he was promoted to the 7th level. None of the civil and military officials in the imperial court said anything bad about Yang Chendong. On the contrary, they took a lot of potatoes home. After receiving benefits, they said that Wang Go was too harsh on Yang Duo and deserved to be beaten. Once these rumors spread, who would dare to be dissatisfied with the Yang family? Not to mention deliberately causing trouble, it was already good enough that no one came looking for trouble. As a result, 3rd sister, Ong Jing, and 4th sister, Yang Mei, finally had the chance to leave their in-laws' house and come to the Yang family village to meet with their brothers and sisters. And all of this was thanks to their 6th brother, Yang Chendong, who had just come to the capital. If not for him, who knew what kind of suffering they would have had to endure? Yang Chendong couldn't bear to see his 2 sisters crying, so he signaled to Qiaoyin with his eyes. Qiaoyin immediately walked over and helped 3rd sister and 4th sister into the central room with 5th sister, 6th sister, Yang Qin. After the 4 sisters entered the central room, Yang Chendong looked at his 5 brothers and said, "Let's go. If there's anything you want to say, we can talk inside." Turning around, Yang Chendong led the way in. Behind him was eldest brother, Yang Gong, and the others. Last was 2nd brother, Yang Rang, whose face was pale. Although he hated his 6th brother for not giving him face, he wanted to know what had happened in the Yang family village. As a 6th-rank official, it was necessary for him to know what was going on in the court. In the central room, everyone was seated according to their size. But it was worth mentioning that the one sitting at the head was Yang Chendong, not eldest brother, Yang Gong. It was true that this was the Yang family village, but it was built by Yang Chendong. He was the owner, so it was appropriate for him to sit at the head of the table. Everyone seemed to have some doubts about this, but because of Yang Chendong's display of strength, they tactfully didn't ask anything, but their gazes were clearly pressing. There were some things that Yang Chendong didn't want to be so clear about, but since his brothers had objections, he had to say them. "Brothers, there is one thing that 6th brother needs to clarify first. Although this Yang family village is called the Yang family village, it is different from the Yang family village in Jianghu prefecture. That Yang family village is jointly owned by us brothers, but the one below us is 6th brothers. The Yang family village in the capital had 2,000 mu of fertile land. And it wasn't far from the capital, so its value could be imagined." Now that they heard that Yang Chendong had taken it for himself, the 5 brothers' expressions immediately changed. But before they could ask anything, Yang Chendong continued, "6th brother knows what you brothers are thinking, but I must say that all of the investment in this Yang family village is 6th brothers alone, spending a total of 2,000 taels of gold. This is all from my partnership with cousin Yang Fu, the restaurant in Jianghu prefecture, and the newspaper Yang Bao. Not only that, 6th brother will also be opening an Immortal abode restaurant and a trading company in the capital. These 2 projects should cost at least 300,000 taels of silver. These matters have already been reported to His Majesty today, and eunuch Wang Zhen and cousin Yang Fu also have 10% of the shares." He wouldn't rest until his words shocked everyone to death. Yang Chendong laid out his plans for the future. Since they were interested in a mere Yang family village, if he didn't make things clear beforehand, all sorts of trouble would come knocking on his door in the future. As for eunuch Wang Zhen's shares, they probably wouldn't dare to casually reveal such a big matter. Originally, when Yang Chendong said that the Yang manor had nothing to do with the brothers, they wanted to object. They also wanted to ask where the money to buy the manor came from if it had nothing to do with them. But when they heard that Yang Chendong had invested 300,000 taels in a restaurant and a trading company, they were so frightened that they didn't know what to say. If he could take out 300,000 taels of silver so easily, then this little Yang family village really didn't count for much. Not to mention, he had such a close relationship with Wang Zhen. From the looks of it, anyone who wanted to cause trouble for him was courting death. Yang Chendong saw the expressions on his brothers' faces change again and again, and he couldn't help but feel a wave of satisfaction in his heart. He had purposely brought up Wang Zhen's name in order to frighten them, and it seemed that it had been quite effective. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.